Hey everyone, thanks for joining us. Brixie Studios Do-It-Yourself video series. If you would do us a favor and subscribe, hit that notification bell, and check out our links, Instagram, Facebook, and of course everything else we've got here. Let's dive right into it. This is a video that is going to be for our crush creamers. And of course the first thing we've got to do every time is get everything centered up, and we're trying to get you a good view of what I'm doing here. I'm going to work this back and forth, and this is just it's just a little extra help instead of wedging the clay. I know there are people that wedge the clay. They don't necessarily do that here. We use a special pug mill, and we actually try to get all the air out in between. This is basically like massaging it. We'll talk a little bit more about that in our specialty videos. But anyway, so we've got the cone-up process, and what we're shooting for is what looks like a little disc so we can start our cylinder. We're going to start with a cylinder so we can end with a cylinder. And a crush creamer, for those of you who don't know, is exactly what it sounds like. We're going to make essentially what looks like a little pitcher, like a small, almost like a quart size. We're going to stop around a quart, maybe just a little bit over a quart, depends on what you're shooting for. We're actually doing about a 2-pound piece. And what I'm talking about right here is how I'm going to open this vessel. Again, we'll talk a little bit more about those on our specialty videos, but how we open our cylinders is very important because we want to have the lightest vessel we can have for what we're using, and we need a flat bottom. In order to achieve that flat bottom, we used our 2 fingers, just like I showed you there, and we're going to open it up just a little bit wider than a coffee mug so that we can make it, again, something more like a small pitcher that's going to fit in your hand. And that's the idea, is that a crush creamer is not going to actually have a handle. We're going to use our hand to deform the vessel so that it will fit in your hand after it's fired. So back to what we were doing here. This is the opening, and we're trying to, a couple different angles, that's a great angle, to show exactly how wide we need this vessel to be. When you open your vessel, that's about the size that you're going to have the base of the base of this particular one, and that's something to keep in mind. We're doing a lot of compression here, and again, specialty videos, but you'll see that I move with my thumb and my right middle finger back and forth, and that is going to help us prevent cracking in the bottom of your pieces. It's not really something I mind to talk about otherwise. It is important enough to repeat time and time again. Take your time with compression. Take your time with compression. Make sure that you've done the bottoms just right so that you don't have to worry about that coming back to bite you later. We don't spend a lot of time trimming those here at the studio. Alright, so time for the magic. Everyone loves to see the pull. Just enough. Get towards the top there. We could talk about that, but we're not going to. We're going to talk about the reason why I made crush creamers. And crush creamers came about actually just like many things do when you first start out in pottery. You make stuff for your friends and family because that's pretty much the only people that want to have your stuff or support you enough. And I had an aunt who has recently passed that loved these little altered vessels because she was unable to completely close her hand around a handle very tightly. It was very difficult for her with her hand grip strength and the arthritis in her hand. She couldn't really do that. So I started making these vessels for her, and I actually had only made, I think, 2 or 3 and gave her one. Took some to a show, and they were the first thing that went out the door, so it's a pretty popular vessel. Anyways, that's what a crush creamer is. She actually uses it for, she used it for orange juice and enjoyed it. You know, it's just something that's unique. It's something that's not something that is a normal piece you would see. And it's just fun enough and small enough to be used on a daily basis. Plus, everything we use in our studio is stoneware, so that's something to keep in mind. This is a mid-range, technically a mid-range cone 6 stoneware. We get this down at High Water Clay, and they manufacture this for us. It's a blend that we do not have to sift through or work with. It's pretty helpful when we do it that way. So again, stoneware, meaning that everything we make is food safe, dinnerware safe, microwave, oven safe, all that good. And we hope you enjoy it and use it. So again, back to the pulling. We're trying to top off a very, very height of this vessel, and what I'm talking about here is it's known as collaring or choking, and we're trying to pull this vessel back in so that we can get enough of a throat to have something that will pour the fluid out, accelerate the fluid. That's what a throat is for in these vessels. It's actually to help you move that along. And we're going to go back down and actually start some shaping. That's the fun part. Give a little bit of a belly to the vessel, and then come back and tighten that collar up just a little bit more. In particular, you want to pay attention when you have ribs like this. That's a kidney rib that you'll see in my hand. That's a very flexible kidney. It's a very basic one. It's what comes in the $10 do-it-yourself kits that you can get just about any pottery supply place. And those can be used interchangeably, and you'll see where my fingers are at. I'm talking about the transition between a body piece such as a waist and a collar or shoulder, and how in this particular instance we want to try to be as smooth with our curvatures as possible so that we have a great transition. Sometimes you want a really harsh, sharp geometric transition, sometimes not. In this particular case, not. We're trying to focus in on our target audience, and that's really what I'm trying to explain here. So the rest of this will be polishing up the collar, as we've essentially formed the vessel out as far as we can, and as far as the thinness and the base and the waist of the piece. That collar is, or excuse me, the very top of the collar is where we want to sharpen the vessel just a tiny bit. And by sharpen, I'm saying actually mean flatten at a particular angle the side of the top of the lip of our new creamer. And the reason for that is that sharpness is actually going to help cut the piece, or excuse me, cut the flow of water, just as it is going to facilitate the actual flow. You want to cut it the same way. You don't want a pitcher that's going to just dribble out everywhere. That's no good. So we'll sharpen up just ever so slightly using the kidney rib on the flat side, holding it at a tiny bit of an angle, and we're going to tilt it in such a manner, not necessarily flat, but actually out. And when we do that, it's going to give us that little bit that will help with controlling that fluid with both pouring and cutting. So you'll notice as I sharpen this down that I immediately grab that sponge there and unsharpen, if you will, because you don't need to have anything that's got an edge that will cause a fragility to your vessel. And when you have sharp edges, that's really just asking for trouble. That's the first thing that's going to get chipped, knocked, broke in loading or unloading the dishwasher, or loading and unloading the cabinetry. That's not something you want to have happen. So just be careful with your edges. Even though we say sharpen, we're not getting carried away, and we want them to be just soft enough so they're still comfortable for use, just in case somebody actually for some reason decided to drink out of it. That's fine. I don't know why they would, but you don't want anything that's going to be sharp enough that's not soft to the human body. So here we are talking about importance of tools, edges and tools. Again, I'll reference that and get you guys to check out our other videos when we are talking about the importance of tools and what they do. In this case, I'm using a small sculpture knife to alter the bottom. That's called the foot of our piece, and I'm rolling it up such that it gives us a nice clean edge, something that can hold itself against the wear and tear of a cabinet and dishwasher, just like we're talking about there. So this is basically going over exactly how to pull forth the edge of the spout here, and although I'm just pulling my right finger forward, it is something that I'm rolling back and forth as well, and that's what I was trying to explain and try to show that this spout work is crucial. You don't want to crush your edges, and that's what we just took so long to form. So I'm going back in and making sure that we have a little bit of a throat, get the spout so that it will pour cleanly and cut cleanly, and just finish off any kind of little bits there as far as the formation. Now, I would go back in and polish this further with a sponge work if that was so needed, but it would just be very minimal from this point forward. I'm also just trying to say, look, you need to make sure that when you line this up to go to crush this, that you turn it in on yourself just a tiniest bit, because that's going to help out with the exact issue that you're having is that arthritis issue. So it's turning it in just a little bit into the body. And then I'm going to put my right hand on it. You could do the left hand as well. And it's just a gentle crush. I don't know if you saw it there. It's almost too quick to happen. It's just a gentle crush and a shake. And it gives us this form, which is kind of funny looking, but it fits into your hand perfectly so that you don't have to worry about a handle. And that's what the idea was behind the crush creamer. We don't have to worry about a handle. It's something that she can't hold on to anyway. So hopefully you've enjoyed our video. We appreciate you stopping in. Again, if you don't mind, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and check out our other links. We appreciate you watching.